Hi everyone, my name is Summer Williamson and I am a student at the University of Texas Arlington. Today I'm going to be doing a book review on The End of Leadership by Barbara Kellerman. Barbara Kellerman is the James McGregor Burns Lecturer in Public Leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School. She's the founding executive director of the school's Center for Public Leadership. Ms. Kellerman has a PhD in political science from Yale. She was awarded a Danforth Fellowship and 3 Fulbright Fellowships. She's also the co-founder of the International Leadership Association and is the author of and editor of quite a few books. She was ranked by Forbes.com as one of the top 50 business thinkers in 2009, and then again she was ranked by Leadership Excellence in the top 15 of thought leaders in management and leadership. She was also given the Wilbur M. McFeely Award by the National Management Association for her pioneering work on leadership and fellowship. The purpose of this book is where she attempts to identify why leadership industry has become unable to produce true leaders and tries to explain how the dynamics of leadership has changed throughout history. She says that leadership has become a mantra. When people think of the word leader, they think of its path. It's a path to money and power, achievement, and a tool to create change. However, New Age leaders are performing poorly, leading to everyone's distrust in their leadership. She explains that the current state of leadership is no better understood than it was 40 years ago, and that followers are becoming more and more disenchanted by those who are leading them. The historical trajectory of leadership was about the devolution of power. People desired a strong leader to which they could be proud to follow. Leaders at one time were meant to lead and dominate those who followed them. She also talks about hero leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, and Steve Jobs, who inspired people for good reasons, versus monster leaders like Hitler, who led for their own benefit, not for that of mankind. She also mentions that there's a decline for respect of authority. The followers demand more, and leaders give in to their wishes. Now it seems that the followers are bolder than the leaders, and the leaders are taught to never order anyone. So there's a huge power shift now between leaders and followers. The target audience of this book is people seeking to understand how leadership has changed and why the industry has failed. She also kind of directs it towards the leadership industry itself and the organizations that help train leaders. They could be anything like courses, seminars, institutes, anything like that actively trains leaders. The biggest strength I see in this book is that she gives an extensive overview of leadership from the past. Nearly 3/4 of the book talks about leadership in the past and how leaders were essentially worshipped and how some provoked fear in their followers for obedience. However, some inspired their followers to change and do good. She talks about how technology plays a huge role in how leaders are perceived. Nowadays, there's readily available information that can be obtained at your fingertips, so it's changed the balance of power between leaders and followers. This can give followers an advantage when it ultimately gives them more power. She talks about the lack of leadership and describes how change occurs. The shortcomings in this book, one thing that I didn't agree with 100% with was that she insinuated that technology is what caused the disempowerment of leaders. While I agree that technology has played a role in the way leaders are perceived, I don't think it has necessarily caused the disempowerment. I also didn't like how repetitive the book was. As I discussed in the previous slide, 3/4 of the book was about the history of leadership, and there were many times that I found myself saying, "Man, you already said that," or "Man, she's repeating herself." She also really does not give a real solution to the crisis of the end of leadership. She talks about how the followers rebelled against leaders and are rebelling now. She doesn't really focus on how leaders can lead better. Do I think she met her objective? Yes and no. She was clear in her objective when she said leadership has changed. She thoroughly reviewed the history of leadership, so that objective was clearly met. She also mentions a new model of leadership is needed, but she doesn't really go into that. I agree that a new model is needed, but I can't say that she clearly met the objective on that end. And finally, she was able to meet the objectives of her 2 major themes in her book. The leadership and change, clearly met. The leadership industry, partially met. I feel like the book was geared more towards how to be an effective follower than really talking about the leadership, how leadership should change to overcome the barriers. Would I recommend this book? Yes. I would recommend this book for college level professionals or people aspiring to be leaders. It would also be interesting for people who enjoy reading the history of leadership or history in general. Was it my personal favorite? No. However, it was interesting to look at how so much has changed since the times of gods and kings with loyal subjects to now where people are taught to question everything. So a complete power shift between the leaders and followers are present. I thought it was interesting that even how it even talked about the 1950s. It talked about how wives usually stayed home and the husbands went out to work, and how all of that has played a role in why leadership has changed as well with women in that field.